A woman sits down and signs a stack of court paperwork. Paperwork that will one day end up in front of a federal jury. What do you do when the walls are closing in on a crime you've already committed? Most people panic. Most people run. Some people call a lawyer and go quiet. This person did something almost nobody does. Something so bold, federal agents would later call the greed behind it staggering. Because by the time it was over, close to $10 million had disappeared. From where? We'll get there. This story isn't really about the money. It's about how far one person will go to not get caught. Every single day, Amazon delivers millions of packages. But here's something most people never think about. The driver who drops that box on your porch probably doesn't work for Amazon at all. Amazon runs on small businesses, thousands of them. They're called delivery service partners, independent companies with their own vans, their own drivers, their own payroll, contracted to handle the last mile between the warehouse and your front door. It's a machine built on outsourced trust. And in Atlanta, Georgia, one of those small businesses looked exactly like all the others. A delivery company, vans, routes, packages, ordinary in every possible way. The woman who owned it? For now, let's just call her the owner. Because who she is matters less at this point in the story than what she had. And what she had was a connection. See, across town, inside an actual Amazon warehouse in Smyrna, Georgia, there was someone else. An operations manager, a supervisor, someone Amazon trusted enough to hand real authority, the authority to approve brand new vendors, and the authority to approve paying their invoices. Think about what that means for a second. In a company as big as Amazon, nobody can check everything. Millions of transactions, thousands of suppliers. At some point, the system has to trust somebody, and inside that warehouse, the system trusted her. Two people, one on the outside running a business built on Amazon's money, one on the inside holding the keys to how Amazon's money gets spent. On paper, they had no reason to ever appear in the same story, but their paths crossed, and when they did, it wasn't business, it was personal. How personal? We'll get there. Here's the question that should be forming in your mind right now. The same question federal investigators would eventually be forced to answer. What happens when the person on the outside of the machine gets a partner on the inside? Time to put names to the silhouettes. The owner of that delivery company was Brittany Hudson. Her company, Legend Express LLC, a licensed Amazon delivery service partner. The operations manager inside that Smyrna warehouse was Wortham, and the connection between them wasn't professional. Brittany Hudson and Wortham were in a romantic relationship, a couple. One partner on the outside, one partner on the inside. Now, to understand what happened next, you need to understand how vendors work. When Amazon needs something at a warehouse, supplies, services, equipment, it buys from vendors. A vendor gets added to the system. The vendor sends an invoice. Amazon pays the invoice. Simple, efficient, fast. And that speed is the whole point. A machine that size can't stop to double-check every purchase order, so the system leans on one safeguard: the people with the authority to approve. Wortham was one of those people. Starting in early 2022, prosecutors say, the couple went to work. Fake vendors, companies that existed on paper and absolutely nowhere else, began appearing in Amazon's system. But here's the detail that makes this scheme different. Wortham didn't always enter them herself. According to investigators, she used her position to get her own subordinates to do it. Employees who trusted her, punching vendor details into the system, details handed to them by their own boss. People with no idea what they were actually typing. Once the vendors existed, the invoices started. Bills for goods Amazon never received. Services that were never performed. Each one flowing through the approval channel Wortham controlled. and out into bank accounts the couple controlled. No hacking, no stolen passwords, no technical genius of any kind. Just trust, pointed in the wrong direction. And this is the part that should unsettle you. It worked. Month after month, invoice after invoice. Nobody caught it. Not because it was brilliant, but because it exploited the one thing every workplace on earth runs on: the assumption that the person in charge is playing by the rules. How much did they take before anyone noticed? Hold that question, because the answer is coming, and it's bigger than you think. January 2022 to June 2022. 6 months. That's the window. At first, the numbers were the kind that hide easily inside a giant. Thousands of dollars. Then tens of thousands. A fake invoice here, a fake vendor there. Rounding errors by Amazon standards. But greed has a growth rate. The invoices kept coming. Bigger, faster. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. And the money kept flowing out of one of the richest companies on the planet into accounts controlled by 2 people in Atlanta. By the time the scheme ran its course, the total wasn't thousands. It wasn't hundreds of thousands. It wasn't even 1 million. It was nearly $10 million. Roughly 9.4 million pulled out of Amazon in about 6 months through vendors that never existed and invoices for things that were never delivered. So, what do you do with $10 million you were never supposed to have? If the goal is getting away with it, the answer is nothing. You sit on it. You stay quiet. You keep driving the same car, living in the same house, looking exactly like a person who did not just steal $10 million. That is not what happened. First came the house, a $1 million home in Smyrna, Georgia, the same town as the warehouse the money was flowing out of. Then came the garage, a 2021 Dodge Durango, then a 2022 Tesla Model X, then a 2018 Porsche Panamera, and then the crown jewel, a Lamborghini Urus, a super SUV that starts north of $200,000. And at the end of it all, almost as an afterthought, a Kawasaki motorcycle. Because at some point, apparently, why not? Now stop and look at that list again, because somewhere in there, somewhere between the first fake invoice and the Lamborghini, is the moment this story turns. Was it the house, planted in the same town as the crime? Was it the third luxury car? It's hard to name the exact purchase where caution died, but here's what you can say. This is the pattern investigators see over and over and over. The stealing rarely sinks the scheme on its own. The spending does. Money sitting quietly in an account is just numbers on a screen. A Lamborghini in the driveway of someone whose business runs delivery vans is a question waiting to be asked. And by the fall of 2022, someone was asking. September 2022. Federal prosecutors in the Northern District of Georgia filed charges. Brittany Hudson, Wortham, defrauding Amazon. And the agency running the investigation? The United States Secret Service. Yes, the same agency that protects presidents also chases financial crimes. And now it was chasing them. The walls weren't closing in anymore. They had arrived. But here's where this story leaves the well-worn path. Because Hudson and Wortham weren't locked up awaiting trial. They were released on bond, out in the world, living under federal indictment with everything hanging over their heads. Put yourself there for a moment. You're facing federal fraud charges. Every rational voice in your life, your lawyer, your family, common sense itself, is saying the same thing. Lay low. Say nothing. Do not draw attention. Instead, they tried to start a new business, a new venture, a new partner, a franchising company that had no idea who it was really dealing with. There was just one problem. Federal fraud charges are public record. A basic background check would surface the indictment. Any serious partner was going to find out. So they got ahead of it. They acknowledged the charges, and then they said something else. something that changed everything. The charges, they claimed, had been dismissed, dropped, over, done with. It was a lie. The case was very much alive. But a lie that big can't survive on words alone. Sooner or later, someone asked for proof. And proof is exactly what they decided to provide. What they did next is the reason this case made national headlines. It's the reason you're watching this video. January 2023, out on bond, case pending, and an email goes out to the potential business partner. Attached, court documents, official looking, formatted correctly, declaring that the federal charges against Brittany Hudson and Wortham had been dismissed. And at the bottom of those documents, signatures. The signature of former Chief United States District Judge Timothy C. Batten, Sr., a real federal judge connected to their real case, alongside the signature of a federal magistrate judge. Except the judges never signed anything. The documents were fake, manufactured, the signatures forged. Sit with that for a second, because people forge a lot of things: checks, contracts, permission slips. But forging the signature of a federal judge on fake federal court documents while you are actively out on bond in that same federal court system, that's not hiding from the law, that's impersonating it, wearing the authority of the very court prosecuting you as a costume, using the justice system itself as your alibi. And here's the trap built into it. That forged document couldn't make the original case disappear. Nothing could. What it could do, what it did do, was hand federal prosecutors a brand new crime, committed in writing, while on pretrial release, with the evidence conveniently attached to an email. The fraud case now had a forgery case stapled to it. The walls they were trying to escape, they had just poured the concrete for new ones. A Secret Service agent would later put it in words that stuck. She was so confident she wouldn't be caught, she forged the signature of a federal judge to defraud a second company. Confidence, or something well past confidence. Either way, there was no walking it back now. Time to fill in every blank. Wortham, the Amazon operations manager, the inside half of the scheme, never made it to trial. She pleaded guilty, and in 2023, a judge sentenced her to 16 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. She was also ordered to pay $9.4 million in restitution to Amazon. Later, she pleaded guilty to the forgery as well. 16 years. Remember that number. Brittany Hudson took a different road. She fought the charges, took the case all the way to a federal jury in Atlanta. And in March of 2026, that jury came back, guilty, on every single count. All 30, conspiracy, wire fraud, money laundering, lying to the franchising company while on pretrial release, and forging the signature of a federal judge. 30 for 30. The money? Gone, and going back. The jury found that the funds seized from Hudson's bank account and residence were forfeitable as proceeds of fraud. The $1 million house in Smyrna, the Durango, the Tesla, the Panamera, the Lamborghini, the motorcycle. More than $3 million in seized assets, forfeited. The empire the money built was dismantled, piece by piece, the same way it was assembled. As for Hudson herself, her sentencing is set for June 16, 2026, in federal court in Atlanta. As of this recording, that number is still an open question, but her partner's 16 years is the benchmark hanging over that courtroom. And unlike Wortham, Hudson didn't take a deal. She went to trial and lost on everything, including the forgery. So let's go back to the beginning, to the questions we started with. How do you steal nearly $10 million from Amazon? You don't hack anything. You get trusted. You take a position built on trust, the authority to approve, and you point it at yourself. You let people who trust you type the lies into the system on your behalf. And how far will someone go? to not get caught. Farther than panic, farther than running, all the way to a fake federal court document with a real judge's forged name at the bottom, created not to escape the scheme, but to keep it going, to land the next deal, to keep the machine fed. Because that's the thing about this kind of greed. It doesn't have a finish line. Somewhere around the first fake invoice, enough stopped being enough, and it never came back. The walls didn't just close in on Brittany Hudson. She built the last one herself and signed a judge's name to it. If this story pulled you in, hit like and subscribe. There's a new case of greed, fraud, in the moment it all unravels, every week. And tell me in the comments, where should she have stopped? Because somebody out there always thinks they won't get caught.